Okay, so what does a butterfly have to do with, say, the AI that's pretty much running our lives? And what could they possibly teach us about the power of community? Well, today we're going to unpack this really surprising story that links a tiny insect, a massive global algorithm, and a group of people who just would not give up. Like a lot of really important stories, this one starts out super simple. It all begins with that feeling, that connection between a kid and the natural world. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? That sense of total wonder when you see a snail up close for the very first time, or you just watch a ladybug crawl right across your hand. And hey, this isn't just some sentimental, fluffy idea. It's actually a core principle of environmental education. Experts like Da Vinci, they all agree that this feeling of wonder is the real foundation for learning. Think about it. Before you can teach a kid to, protect the environment, you've got to help them build a relationship with it first. Which leads to a pretty strange question, doesn't it? How on earth does something so human, so natural, end up in a fight with something so technical and, frankly, so distant, like an algorithm? Well, that is exactly the surprising turn this story is about to take. Okay, so to really get what happened in this battle, we first need to meet the heroes. And this story isn't about just one person. It's about an entire community and a project that was actually born from a really serious crisis. So let's talk about the stakes here, because they're high. In just the last 20 years, the monarch butterfly population, the ones that migrate, has absolutely plummeted. We're talking more than 80% gone. Scientists call them an indicator species, which is kind of a clinical way of saying, hey, pay attention. Where they go, the rest of the ecosystem is probably not far behind. So yeah, their decline is a huge warning sign for all of us. So what do? How do you fight back against a crisis that big? Well, one really powerful tool is something called early childhood environmental education, or ECEE. And the key here, it's not about making kids memorize facts about pollution. No, it's about building an emotional connection. It's about fostering that sense of caring, of responsibility for the natural world, right from the very beginning. And this is where we land in Inwood, a neighborhood up in New York City. A local grassroots group, the Inwood Butterfly Sanctuary, decided they had to do something. So they teamed up with local schools, and they took these neglected public spaces and turned them into a children's pollinator garden. I mean, a real, living, breathing outdoor classroom just filled with all the native plants that monarchs absolutely need to survive. And what they were doing in Inwood, it's not some random fluke. It's basically the gold standard for this stuff. All the research on these programs shows the same thing. The ones that work best are the ones that are ongoing, they're based in schools, and, this is the most important part, they get kids' hands dirty. They get them out in nature. It just proves that kind of direct, hands-on experience, that's what actually works. So the sanctuary's work was going great. So great, in fact, that people started noticing, way outside their own neighborhood. But with that recognition came a completely new and totally unexpected challenge. Their project, which they called Wings Without Borders, got noticed on a global scale. It was named a finalist for a huge social impact prize, the Anthem Awards. I mean, just think about that for a second. This small, local community garden was picked from more than 2,300 entries from all over the world. They were right up there with massive international organizations. It's a huge deal. But that international spotlight came with a price. Right when the public voting for the award was happening, the sanctuary says they got hit by a coordinated cyberbullying campaign. A group of opponents just started mass reporting their social media pages, their website, hitting them with totally false claims of animal cruelty. So what you have here is a classic battle of narratives. On one side, you've got the sanctuary's real mission: conservation, education, community. And on the other side, you've got this wave of misinformation all designed to do one thing: shut them down by basically turning the platform's own reporting tools against them. And at first, the attack worked. This flood of false reports triggered Facebook's automated moderation AI. And the algorithm, well, it can't tell the difference between a community garden and a real threat, right? It just saw the reports. So it did exactly what it's programmed to do. It suspended their page. It banned their website link across all of Meta's platforms. They were completely silenced,
right at the moment they needed their community the most.
So, they're cut off from their community. They could have just given up right there, but they didn't. Instead, they got creative. They decided to fight the algorithm with the algorithm. They launched this absolutely brilliant countermove. They called it the #censorship challenge. And the strategy was so simple, it was genius. First, they asked all their supporters to try and share their banned website link. Then, step 2, when Facebook inevitably blocked it, they told everyone to take a screenshot of that block notice. And finally, step 3, share that screenshot with the hashtag. They literally turned the platform's censorship into visible, shareable proof of what was happening. And the technology at the very heart of this whole thing is something we're all hearing about constantly now: generative AI. These are the systems that can create text, images, all that stuff. It was the very tool that was automatically blocking them, and you guessed it, it was about to become their best weapon. So in this amazing fight fire with fire move, the sanctuary started using Meta's own generative AI tools. They use things like Meta's Imagine feature to create brand new images and post for their page. They were making new content that the automated censorship system didn't recognize, which meant it couldn't block it. They basically used the AI to sneak right past the AI. And what happened to the sanctuary, it's a perfect example of a much bigger global problem. This fight against a faceless algorithm, it wasn't just a fluke. The reality is that the development, the control of AI, it's massively concentrated in just a few places, mostly the global north. And that creates this huge power imbalance. So you have these powerful tools built in one part of the world that can have these really unfair, unintended consequences for small, grassroots projects everywhere else. So you see, this story of one little garden in New York City, it's about so much more than just butterflies or technology. It plugs right into a much larger conversation that's happening all over the world. A conversation about fairness, about equity, and about the environment. And that brings us to this really important idea: environmental justice. When you boil it down, it's a simple but super powerful principle. It's the idea that everyone, and I mean everyone, no matter your race, your income, where you live, deserves to have a healthy environment. And you deserve to have a real say in the decisions that affects that environment. There's this amazing quote from Dr. Uwe Stewart at data.org that just nails it. He said, "Infrastructure is climate justice." And when we hear infrastructure, we usually think, bridges, power grids, but this redefines it. A community garden in an underserved neighborhood, a safe green space for kids, that is critical infrastructure. That is what climate justice looks like in the real world. So, let's bring it all home. What can we really learn from a small butterfly garden that went head-to-head with an algorithm? Well, as it turns out, a whole lot. Okay, so what are the big takeaways here? First, starting that sense of environmental wonder early on, that creates lifelong stewards for our planet. Second, even the best grassroots projects now have to deal with modern problems, like getting censored by an algorithm. But, and this is the hopeful part, their story proves that a little creative advocacy can turn a huge obstacle into an opportunity. It shows us that even small-scale habitat restoration is an act of justice. And finally, that community action. It's a powerful model for change that anyone can replicate. And that really just leaves us with one final thought. Look, the world is full of these massive, complex challenges that can feel, well, pretty overwhelming. But this one small garden, it gives us some much-needed perspective. Because if a community can get together, get creative, and take on a flawed algorithm just to save a butterfly, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other broken systems can we challenge? What else is actually possible?